The night had been a blur of rain, sirens in the distance, and a mistake that would haunt him long before the sun came up. Caleb hadn't meant for any of it to happen the way it did, but sometimes life doesn't ask what you meant, only what you did. And by morning, as the pale light crept through the hospital blinds, everything he thought he knew about himself felt heavier and harder to forgive. Asterisk if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the idea that one moment doesn't define an entire life. Take a second right now to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Stories like this are reminders that, even in our worst moments, there's still a path forward. Asterisk, it had started with a phone call. Asterisk, Caleb had just gotten home. After a long shift at a construction site in a quiet part of Ohio, his hands were still dusty, his back aching in that familiar way that came from years of lifting things no one ever thanked him for. The rain outside tapped steadily against the windows, filling the small apartment with a lonely kind of rhythm. He had been about to sit down when his phone rang, an unknown number flashing across the screen. Asterisk. He almost didn't answer. Asterisk, but something in him did. Asterisk, the voice on the other end was strained, weak, and trembling. It belonged to a woman named Hannah, name he didn't recognize at first, but one that quickly settled into his memory like a puzzle piece, finally finding its place. She had been the new hire at the local bookstore down the street, someone he had spoken to only a handful of times. Always polite, always smiling, even when her eyes suggested she was carrying more than she let on. Asterisk that night, though. Her voice was different. She sounded afraid. She had said she didn't know who else to call. That her roommate had left town. That she wasn't feeling well. She had tried to stand up but couldn't. Her words were broken, slipping in and out of coherence like someone fighting to stay awake. Caleb didn't hesitate after that. He grabbed his keys and left, the rain soaking through his jacket as he rushed to his car. Asterisk, the drive felt longer than it should have been. Asterisk, every red light was an obstacle, every second dragging with a weight that made his chest tighten. He finally reached her apartment. The door was unlocked. That alone made his heart race. He found her on the floor. She was barely conscious. Her breathing shallow, her skin cold to the touch. There was a bottle of medication nearby. Something over the counter, nothing that should have caused this kind of reaction, but something clearly wasn't right. Caleb's mind raced. He called 911 immediately, his voice shaking as he tried to explain what he was seeing. Asterisk while waiting for the ambulance. He did what he could. Asterisk, he remembered something from a first aid class years ago, that keeping someone responsive, warm, and breathing steadily could make a difference. Her clothes were damp with sweat, her body trembling. He didn't think about how it might look. He didn't think about anything except keeping her alive. He covered her with a blanket, adjusted what he could to make her more comfortable, and stayed beside her, speaking softly, urging her not to drift away. When the paramedics arrived, everything moved fast. Questions were thrown at him. What happened? What did she take? How long had she been like this? Caleb answered as best as he could, but his mind was spinning. They took her away, and he followed behind in his car, his hands gripping the steering wheel tighter than ever before. Asterisk, hours passed in the hospital waiting room. Asterisk, the kind of hours that feel like days. Asterisk, Caleb sat there, replaying everything over and over again. The sound of her voice on the phone, the way she had looked on the floor, the fear that had settled deep in his chest and refused to leave. He didn't know why he felt so responsible. Maybe it was because she had called him. Maybe it was because he had been the one to find her, asterisk. Or maybe it was because, deep down, he knew how close it had come to being too late. Asterisk, when morning finally arrived, a nurse approached him. Asterisk, she told him that Hannah was stable. She had suffered a severe allergic reaction, combined with dehydration, that if he hadn't come when he did, things could have been much worse. Relief hit him like a wave, but it didn't last long. Asterisk, because a few minutes later, he was allowed to see her, and that's when everything changed. Hannah was awake, but her expression was confused. her eyes searching his face like she was trying to piece together fragments of a memory that didn't quite make sense. The room was quiet, except for the steady beep of the monitor beside her, and then she asked it. She looked at him, her voice barely above a whisper, and asked what had happened the night before. There was hesitation in her tone, something uncertain, something fragile. She mentioned waking up in a hospital gown, feeling disoriented, not remembering how she got there. Caleb felt his chest tighten. He realized, in that moment, how it might look from her perspective. How waking up in a different place with gaps in memory could be terrifying. How easy it would be for fear to fill in the blanks. Asterisk. And that's when the weight of it all hit him. Asterisk. Not because he had done anything wrong, but because sometimes even the right actions can be misunderstood when the full story isn't clear. Asterisk. He took a deep breath. He told her everything. Slowly, carefully, leaving nothing out. The phone call, the rain, finding her on the floor, calling for help, staying with her until the paramedics arrived. His voice wasn't defensive. It was steady, grounded in the truth. Even though his heart was racing, asterisk for a moment, she just stared at him, and then something shifted. Her eyes softened. The tension in her expression easing as the pieces began to fall into place. She remembered fragments' voice on the phone, the sound of rain, the feeling of not being alone. And with that came understanding, and then came something else. Gratitude. Asterisk, it wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quiet, almost fragile, but it was there. She thanked him not just for coming, but for staying, for not walking away. For doing what needed to be done, even when it was uncomfortable, even when it could be misunderstood. Caleb felt something inside him loosen. Not he hadn't realized was there. Asterisk, because the truth was, he had been carrying guilt. Not for what he had done, but for how it might be seen. For the possibility that his actions, meant to help, could have caused fear instead. Asterisk, but in that moment, he realized something important. Asterisk, doing the right thing doesn't always feel easy. It doesn't always come with immediate clarity or appreciation. Sometimes it comes with doubt, with fear, with the risk of being misunderstood, but that doesn't make it any less right. In the days that followed, Caleb visited Hannah a few times. Not out of obligation, but because something about that night had connected them in a way neither of them fully understood. They talked more, not just about what had happened, but about their lives, their struggles, the quiet battles they had both been fighting in their own ways. Asterisk, Hannah shared how she had been pushing herself too hard, working long hours, ignoring her health, thinking she could handle everything on her own. Caleb shared how he had spent years feeling invisible, doing the right thing without expecting anything in return, but often wondering if it even mattered. Asterisk, and somewhere in those conversations, something changed. Asterisk, not in a dramatic, life-altering way, asterisk, but in a quiet, steady way that felt more real. They both started to see things differently. Hannah began to take better care of herself, to slow down, to ask for help when she needed it. Caleb began to realize that his actions did matter, that even small choices made in difficult moments could have a lasting impact. And maybe that's what the night had been about all along, not the fear, not the confusion, asterisk, but the reminder that even in our most uncertain moments, we have the power to choose kindness, to show up, to stay. Asterisk, before this story ends, there's something I want to ask you. If you've ever been in a moment where you had to choose between walking away or stepping in, comment I would stay. Let's see how many people still believe in being there for others, even when it's not easy. Asterisk, because in the end, that's what mattered most. Not the misunderstanding, not the fear, asterisk, but the fact that someone showed up when it counted. Asterisk, and as Caleb walked out of the hospital that final day, the sun breaking through the clouds for the first time in what felt like forever, he realized something simple but powerful. Asterisk, sometimes the moments that scare us the most are the ones that define us in the best possible way. Asterisk, and if this story touched your heart even a little, don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Because stories like this remind us that the world still has people who choose to. Karand, that might be exactly what someone out there needs to hear today.